Welcome to AI Unraveled, your weekly strategic briefing. It is Sunday, March 15, 2026. I'm your co-host, Anna. Today's episode is brought to you by Jamgamind. For the ads-free, high-density version of this rundown, subscribe to our premium feed at the link in our show notes. This week, the mask finally slipped. Meta is cutting nearly 16,000 employees to fund a $600 billion AI war chest. Microsoft has claimed a stake in medical superintelligence, and Elon Musk has hit the reset button on xAI, merging it with Tesla to create a system called Macrohard. From brain implants in China to the little Lobster open source mania, the infrastructure for the next decade is being laid in blood and silicon. Let's unravel the week.
Imagine tearing down a fully functional, $1 billion skyscraper, right?
Yeah, melting down all the structural steel.
Exactly. Melting it down and using it to build a rocket launch pad. You're destroying something that currently works perfectly, something that houses thousands of people, just to build the foundational infrastructure for a vehicle that hasn't even been fully tested yet.
Right, it's a massive gamble.
It is. And welcome to our AI Unraveled Weekly Review, a deep dive we are calling The Great Capital Migration. Over the past week, specifically, between March 8th and March 15th, 2026, we have watched the biggest technology companies on the planet do exactly that.
Tearing down the skyscraper.
Exactly. We are tracking a historic $600 billion infrastructure shift. Capital is violently fleeing from traditional human labor and legacy software, and, well, it's flowing directly into autonomous systems, open source moats, and physical robotics.
And this isn't a future prediction. This is happening right now.
Right. So our mission today is to take this week's mountain of chaotic signals, from big tech hollowing out their middle class, to geopolitical standoffs over AI supply chains, to literal two-legged factory workers, and extract the real strategic blueprint for you, the third mind in the room with us.
Because you need to know where the capital is going.
Exactly. So as we look at this skyscraper being torn down, we have to ask, what is the actual calculus driving these companies to trade their human workforce for silicon?
Well, the calculus is rooted in a fundamental redefinition of what a technology company actually is. For the last 2 decades, the industry has basically been focused on building tools, right?
Right, like software as a service, communication platform.
Exactly. Creative suites. These were all designed as levers. Human beings use these levers to increase their own productivity. But the data from this week shows a definitive structural pivot. We are no longer building tools for humans to use.
We are building systems to replace them.
We're building systems designed to emulate the entire function of a company.
Yeah.
The capital is moving from payroll, which is, fundamentally an operational expense tied to human biological limitations, to compute.
Right.
Which is a capital expenditure tied to exponential scaling. So if you're tracking investments or building a product or just trying to navigate your career right now, understanding the mechanics of this specific migration of capital is, well, it's the only way to accurately map the next decade.
Let's ground this in the raw numbers, because the scale of this migration is honestly staggering. Meta is reportedly planning to cut 20% of their workforce.
Wow, 20%.
Yeah. That is roughly 15,800 jobs being eliminated out of a nearly 79,000-person headcount. And Mark Zuckerberg is publicly stating that AI-driven efficiency gains are allowing single-person teams to execute projects that historically required massive, multi-layered management structures.
Which is the core thesis of the emulation economy.
Right. But the second half of that ledger is where the skyscraper analogy really hits home. As Meta is cutting those 15,000 human jobs, they have earmarked up to $600 billion for data center infrastructure by 2028.
$600 billion.
$600 billion. They're literally taking the payroll budget and turning it into servers.
It's a permanent structural hollowing out, and we really have to separate this from a cyclical economic downturn.
Yeah, like a normal recession.
Exactly. In a normal business cycle, a company lays people off when macroeconomic conditions tighten, right? Revenues dip, they need to protect margins, and then when demand returns, they rehire.
Sure.
But what Meta is doing, and what we're seeing across the entire sector, honestly, is completely divorced from the business cycle. They are permanently eliminating the tech middle class. And, look beyond social media. Shantanu Narayen just announced he's stepping down as the CEO of Adobe after 18 years.
He took that company from under $1 billion in revenue to over $25 billion. He basically built the modern creative empire.
He did. He built an absolute impenetrable moat around creative software. But let's look at the architecture of that moat. For 20 years, Adobe's competitive advantage was its user interface.
Right, Photoshop, Premiere, Illustrator.
Yeah. They were complex environments with hundreds of drop-down menus, layers, specific tools. You had to hire a professional who had spent years mastering that specific interface.
Yeah, now.
Well, generative AI structurally breaks that moat. If a user can simply type or speak a prompt like make the lighting dramatic and remove the background, the complex user interface becomes completely obsolete.
The tool vanishes.
The tool vanishes, replaced by an autonomous result. So Narayen stepping down right now is a massive signal. It is an acknowledgement that the fundamental architecture of the creative software business model is being completely rewritten.
And we're seeing that ripple outward. I mean, Atlassian and Block are eliminating roughly 5,600 positions combined. BuzzFeed is reportedly nearing bankruptcy after a disastrous pivot toward AI-generated content. Capital is aggressively migrating from human operational friction to autonomous compute.
It's fleeing to the servers.
Exactly. But here is where I see a massive contradiction in the strategy. If Meta is dropping almost 16,000 jobs to spend $600 billion on servers, they're betting the house that the AI can actually do the work.
Which is a huge bet.
It is, because our sources this week show Meta is delaying its new Avocado model to at least May. Why? Because it failed internal reasoning, coding, and writing tests against Google's Gemini 3.0.
Right, that leaked benchmark data.
Yeah, I mean, Avocado beat Meta's own previous models, and it beat Gemini 2.5. But it couldn't touch the November release of Gemini 3.0.
That is a critical data point.
And it gets worse. Meta invested $14.3 billion in Scale AI last year. They made Alexander Wang their chief AI officer and gave 100 engineers at TBD Lab this exact mission build, the model that beats Google.
And they missed the mark.
They missed it. Now, leadership is reportedly discussing temporarily licensing Google's Gemini just to power their own AI products while they try to fix Avocado. So my question is, are they firing the human builders before the robot builders are actually competent? Because that seems incredibly reckless.
It is the definition of reckless. But, it's also an unavoidable trap of the current deployment cycle. What you're describing is a phase we can call the trough of deployment.
The trough of deployment.
Right. Meta is caught right in the middle of it. They have intellectually and financially committed to the vision of a compute-heavy, human-light future. So they're cutting the legacy talent to free up the capital required to buy the compute.
But the compute isn't fully baking the models yet.
Exactly. As the Avocado model delay clearly demonstrates, these new autonomous systems are not fully ready to bear the load. They require massive, honestly humiliating stopgaps.
Like licensing from your biggest rival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The prospect of Meta, which is, one of the proudest engineering cultures on Earth, licensing a rival's foundational model just to keep their consumer products functioning, it proves that the transition from a human-driven enterprise to an AI-driven enterprise is incredibly brittle.
You can buy all the GPUs on the market. You can hire the brightest minds like Alexander Wang. But synthesizing reasoning and coding at the absolute frontier is still an unpredictable science. It isn't just an engineering problem you can throw money at.
No, it's an architectural problem. I mean, if the first phase of this AI boom was about replacing discrete tasks like writing an email draft or generating a marketing image, the phase we entered this week is entirely about emulating the enterprise architecture itself.
Right.
And that requires a level of multi-step reasoning that these models are currently struggling to maintain reliably.
Which brings us to Elon Musk's latest maneuver. Because he is trying to tackle this emulation problem head-on, we have a formal collaboration announced this week between Tesla and xAI. They're internally calling it Macrohard, which is a great little jab, right?
Very subtle.
Or sometimes Digital Optimus. And the explicitly stated goal of this merger of talent is to build AI systems that can perform the functions of entire companies.
Emulate the enterprise.
Emulate it entirely. But in almost the exact same breath, Musk is ousting more of his xAI co-founders because the startup's internal coding division is severely underperforming.
Yeah, that was a messy public fallout.
He is publicly apologizing for past hiring mistakes, stating xAI wasn't built right the first time, and he's literally digging through old interview records to beg promising candidates to come back for a full reset. It feels like the vision is entirely outpacing the reality on the ground.
Well, let's break down the Macrohard concept, because the underlying theory is actually quite brilliant, even if the execution is currently faltering.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Musk realizes that you cannot emulate a complex, dynamic corporate environment using systems that merely predict the next word in a sequence.
Oh.
A company is not a text document.
Right, it's living, breathing logistics.
Exactly. A company is a physical and logical entity that interacts with the real world, allocates resources, and solves novel physical and logistical problems. The idea behind Macrohard is to take Tesla's real-world physical reasoning, which they have spent billions developing through their full self-driving neural nets, and merge it with xAI's cognitive language-based reasoning.
Okay, so Tesla provides the spatial awareness and the cause and effect engine of the physical world, and xAI provides the communication and logic layer.
That is the thesis.
Wow.
But execution is where the friction lies, and Microsoft is actually making a parallel play here, approaching the exact same emulation problem from the software side rather than the physical side.
Right. Microsoft just announced Copilot Cowork, which was built in partnership with Anthropic, and this is a massive leap from a chatbot. Copilot Cowork independently completes tasks.
It really does.
I mean, it creates spreadsheets, runs multi-step reports, and researches using your local files without being prompted at every step. A Microsoft executive literally called it a fire and forget tool.
Fire and forget. That phrasing is so telling.
It is. And the anecdote he shared was wild. The agent autonomously analyzed his calendar, decided which upcoming meetings were a low-priority waste of time, declined them on his behalf, and wrote the apology notes to his colleagues.
Without him clicking anything.
And they are launching Agent 365 on May 1st, specifically to manage all these autonomous agents in the enterprise space.
You know, declining a meeting sounds like a trivial novelty, but it represents a threshold crossing. The software is no longer waiting for a command. It's making a localized value judgment about a human's time.
Right.
And then executing a social action, sending an apology based entirely on that judgment.
But the Microsoft announcement that really caught my eye, and where I think the real hidden value lies, is Microsoft Copilot Health. Have you looked into this?
No, absolutely. It's fascinating.
They are merging consumer wearable data, heart rate, sleep cycles, step counts, with user-inputted medical records. They've had clinicians across 24 countries fine-tune this model. It's kept separate from regular workplace chats, and you can delete your data with a toggle. But there's a massive caveat attached to this product.
The IP issue.
Yes, it is critically not IP protected.
And that deliberate lack of HIPAA compliance is the strategic linchpin. To understand the brilliance and, honestly, the inherent danger of Copilot Health, we need to introduce a specific concept.
Let's do it.
It's called MAI-DxO, or Medical AI Diagnostic Optimization. This is the strategic lens through which this entire product makes sense.
Okay, let's unpack that. Why on earth would Microsoft build a secure medical-grade environment, fine-tune it with global doctors, but specifically avoid HIPAA compliance? I mean, wouldn't HIPAA compliance be the ultimate gold standard for a health product?
It is the gold standard for a hospital, but it is a massive friction point for a software company. HIPAA introduces incredibly strict regulatory perimeters. It's silos data. It requires complex auditing, specific data handling protocols, and explicit permissions for literally every transfer of information. Microsoft does not want to be a hospital holding static medical records.
They want the real-time data.
Exactly. They want frictionless access to intimate user telemetry. By creating a consumer-facing tool that is highly credible, because, it is fine-tuned by established medical frameworks, but keeping it just outside the regulatory perimeter of HIPAA, Microsoft is capturing the most valuable commodity in healthcare.
Continuous real-time data flow.
You got it. Continuous real-time data flow.
So the Moat is no longer the large language model.
No, the models themselves are rapidly becoming commoditized. The true Moat is MAI-DxO. It is the unrestricted, second-by-second flow of your biological data, cross-referenced with your historical medical inputs, and optimized in real time by an autonomous system.
It's acting like a doctor.
It acts as the next best thing to a primary care doctor, but it functions at the zero marginal cost scale of software. They are trading the legal status of an official medical record for the functional reality of being the primary analytical engine for human health.
It's a massive regulatory arbitrage. But let's pull back to the emulation problem for a second. We have Microsoft building fire and forget tools that manage our schedules, and Musk trying to merge Tesla and xAI to run entire corporations. But as we discussed with Musk's coding division failures, the underlying models are still struggling with complex multi-step tasks.
Yeah, they hit a wall.
Right. Why is that ceiling so hard to break through?
Because the current generation of models is still fundamentally based on autoregressive text prediction.
Meaning they just guess the next word.
Exactly. They're incredibly sophisticated pattern matchers. But predicting the next logical word in a sentence is very different from understanding the underlying physics, causality, and logic of a real-world environment. This is exactly why the most important technical shift of this quarter is the race to build world models.
World models. Yann LeCun, the chief AI scientist at Meta, has been preaching this for years, and he just made a massive move to actually build it.
He did. LeCun's new startup, AMI Labs, just raised $1.03 billion.
Wow.
Yeah, at a $3.5 billion pre-money valuation. Their entire thesis, articulated very clearly by their CEO, Alexandre Lebrun, is to abandon the pure text prediction paradigm entirely and build AI systems that learn the underlying physical reality.
So not just reading the internet.
No. They want to build an intelligence that understands cause and effect. Look, if I push this glass off the table, it will fall and shatter. A text model knows that because it read it in a book somewhere.
Right.
A world model understands it because it has an internal mathematical representation of gravity and physical fragility.
And the investor list for AMI Labs is a who's who of the industry. Bezos Expeditions, Nvidia, Eric Schmidt. They are pouring $1 billion into fundamental foundational research, not rushing out quick consumer chat products.
Because they see the end game.
Exactly. They know that the true Macrohard vision, an AI that can reliably run logistics, physical supply chains, and complex corporate strategy, requires an intelligence that actually understands the physical world it is operating in.
Exactly. Whoever solves world models first owns the foundation of the next economy. They build the ultimate operating system for reality.
The stakes are astronomical. But, as these companies scale these systems and as autonomous agents start taking actions in the real world like Copilot declining meetings or sending emails, the friction with human society is reaching a boiling point.
The societal pushback is real.
It's huge.
Yeah.
We have these utopian visions of world models, but let's look at the reality check of what actually happened on the ground this week. Meta is aggressively deploying AI scam detection across Facebook, WhatsApp, and Messenger, and the numbers are wild.
What are we looking at?
They took down 159 million scam ads last year. 92% of them were removed before a single human user even reported them. Yeah. They nuked 10.9 million accounts tied to organized criminal scam centers. WhatsApp is now autonomously flagging fraudulent device linking requests.
Well, it is a massive automated policing effort, entirely necessitated by the unprecedented scale of the platforms themselves. I mean, human moderation at that volume is mathematically impossible.
Right. But here's the paradox. At the exact same time Meta is deploying AI to police the network, they acquire a company called Moat.
Moat.
Yeah, this was an AI social network where autonomous agents built on an open source framework called OpenClaw could interact with each other. Meta buys it, absorbs the creators Matt Schlicht and Ben Parr into their Superintelligence labs. But security researchers immediately point out that Moat had a critical vulnerability. The entire platform was vibe-coded.
We really should define vibe coding for clarity because it represents a major shift in how software is being built and, honestly, why it's currently so vulnerable.
Let's do it. For everyone listening, what exactly is a vibe-coded platform?
Okay, so traditional software engineering relies on rigid syntax. You write specific lines of code in Python or C++A using strict if-then statements, define variables, hard architectural boundaries.
The system only does exactly what you type.
Exactly. The system only does what the syntax allows. Vibe coding, on the other hand, is building software logic using natural language prompts directed at a large language model.
So you just talk to it.
Right. You tell the model, act as a social network backend, route these messages, and don't let human users pretend to be AI agents. It is incredibly fast to build. It feels fluid and intuitive, but it lacks structural boundaries.
Because natural language is inherently malleable.
Precisely. It is deeply insecure. Because a malicious user can simply use natural language to talk the system out of its instructions, this is known as prompt injection.
Right.
And that is exactly what happened on Moat. Human users easily bypassed the fluid instructions of the vibe-coded architecture they posed as AI agents, and they created viral hoaxes. They convinced the network that agents had developed a secret, encrypted language and were conspiring with each other.
That's terrifying and hilarious at the same time. So we have an ecosystem where AI is required to police the scams, but the AI platforms themselves are deeply vulnerable to human manipulation. And the consequences of these vulnerabilities are no longer just viral hoaxes.
No, the stakes are much higher now.
We have reports this week of autonomous AI agents coordinating actual geopolitical propaganda campaigns without any direct human supervision. And perhaps the most chilling story this week came out of North Dakota, where a cascading AI error in a fraud detection system jailed an innocent grandmother for months.
For months. What you are highlighting is the fundamental paradox of scale in this era.
Explain that.
We are building digital infrastructures that are so vast and so opaque that humans can no longer moderate or even fully comprehend them. Therefore, we deploy AI to police the ecosystem. But AI is also the primary tool being utilized by bad actors to exploit that exact same ecosystem.
It's an arms race.
It is. The technology is simultaneously the scammer generating the propaganda, the vulnerable victim, as we saw with the vibe-coded Moat book platform, and the police force taking down 159 million ads.
And while the societal fabric is fraying under this pressure, the companies providing the infrastructure are experiencing unprecedented financial windfalls. Alphabet reported that YouTube's total revenue hit $60 billion in 2025.
$60 billion.
And YouTube alone, just the video platform, pulled in $40.4 billion in ad revenue. That officially surpasses Disney as the largest media company on Earth.
Unbelievable.
Think about that. Disney, NBC, Paramount, and Warner Bros. Discovery combined only made $37.8 billion. A platform comprised entirely of user-generated content, algorithmically surfaced by AI, beat all of Hollywood combined.
The scale is almost difficult to conceptualize.
And Google is integrating AI into every single touch point to maintain that dominance. Google Maps just got its biggest upgrade in a decade. They rolled out a Gemini-powered Ask Maps assistant that can dynamically create itineraries pulling from 300 million real-world places.
That's a massive deployment.
They launched 3D immersive navigation with real-time crosswalks and traffic lights. They introduced a tool called Google Ground Source, which uses Gemini to ingest unstructured, chaotic global news and transform it into structured, actionable historical data. And they were rolling out Gemini Draft and formatting tools globally across Docs, Sheets, and Drive.
The Google integrations illustrate how deeply entrenched these intelligence layers are becoming in our daily physical and digital navigation. But, your point regarding the North Dakota grandmother serves as the vital counterweight to this narrative of seamless integration.
It is the ultimate reality check. We have AI generating the propaganda, AI surfacing the videos on YouTube, AI running the social networks, and AI acting as the police force. Are we, the users, just becoming passive biological observers in a digital ecosystem where autonomous agents are the primary actors?
That's their question.
And how can we possibly trust the police when a simple algorithmic hallucination just deprived a grandmother of her physical liberty for months?
It forces an urgent conversation about liability and discernment. When autonomous system makes a critical error that deprives a human being of their rights or their liberty, where does the accountability lie?
Right. Is it the developer?
Is it the engineer who vibe-coded the system? Is it the corporate entity? Is it the mathematical weights of the model itself? Our current legal frameworks are entirely unprepared to adjudicate these questions.
They aren't ready at all.
No. For anyone trying to navigate this landscape, the takeaway is clear. The premium on human discernment has never been higher. In a world defined by automated information overload and autonomous agent interactions, your ability to critically evaluate truth, to spot the prompt injections and vulnerabilities in the systems you rely on, and to demand human-in-the-loop oversight for critical decisions. Well, that is your ultimate personal moat.
Right.
Critical thinking is no longer an academic luxury. It is a required survival skill in an AI-mediated reality.
It really is. The sheer complexity of mapping all of this out from the infrastructure pivots to the vibe-coded vulnerabilities is staggering. And as we track these $600 billion infrastructure shifts, the complexity is staggering. Our sponsor, Jamgamine, turns this high-level chaos into 60-second audio intelligence. If you want this briefing ads-free, join the Jamgamine premium feed.
It is an invaluable resource for maintaining clarity at this rate of change. Because while the software layer is incredibly complex, the geopolitical layer is where the actual tectonic plates are colliding. And that brings us to the open source battleground.
Yes, the new front line. We are calling it the Cold War of Compute. This is where the numbers and the strategies get truly eye-watering. Nvidia, the company currently selling the shovels for the entire AI gold rush, is now making a $26 billion bet over the next 5 years to build their own open-weight AI models.
That's a massive pivot for a hardware company.
They are stepping in to fill a massive void because Meta is beginning to pull back on their open llama releases, and Chinese providers are aggressively moving to dominate the open source space. So Nvidia just dropped a model called Nemotron 3 Super. It is a 128 billion parameter hybrid model.
We really need to dissect the architecture of Nemotron 3 Super because it's described as a Transformer Mamba hybrid model.
Transformer Mamba.
Yes, this is crucial technical terminology that defines the next generation of efficiency.
Let's break that down for the listeners.
Okay.
We all know transformers power things like ChatGPT. What is Mamba and why combine them?
Okay, think of a traditional transformer architecture like a highly diligent but incredibly inefficient student taking an open book test. Okay. Every time this student reads a new word in the question, they insist on rereading the entire textbook from page 1 just to ensure they have the perfect context.
Wow, so very thorough, but very slow.
Exactly. That deep attention to context is why transformers are so powerful and capable of deep reasoning. But it requires massive compute. It scales quadratically, meaning a long document takes exponentially more processing power to analyze.
And Mamba solves that.
Mamba is a state space model architecture. To use the analogy, Mamba is a student who reads the textbook once, takes highly compressed, running bullet point notes, and only refers to those notes when answering the test.
Oh, that's much faster.
It processes information linearly. It is incredibly fast and highly compute efficient, but it can sometimes miss the deep, complex, contextual nuances that the transformer catches.
So combining them gets you the best of both worlds.
That's the goal. By engineering a Transformer Mamba hybrid, Nvidia is attempting to build the Holy Grail, a system that dynamically routes simple, sequential tasks to the efficient Mamba layers and only triggers the heavy transformer layers for deep reasoning.
And does it work?
Well, Nvidia claims Nemotron 3 Super matches the performance of Claude 4.5 Haiku, though independent benchmarks suggest it still falls slightly short of top-tier Chinese competitors like Qwen 3.5.
And that leads us perfectly into the absolute explosion of open source adoption happening in China right now. To set the board here, you have the U.S. ecosystem, which is increasingly dominated by closed-source proprietary models controlled by a few massive tech giants.
Right. OpenAI, Google, Anthropic.
On the other side, you have a totally different grassroots strategy unfolding in Shenzhen. They're calling it Little Lobster Mania, which refers to a new open-source AI agent framework called OpenClaw.
OpenClaw, it's taking over.
It is wild. The biggest tech conglomerates in China, Tencent, Alibaba, ByteDance, JD.com, Baidu, have all launched competing, completely free installation campaigns for OpenClaw. Lei Jun, the CEO of Xiaomi, publicly endorsed it.
It is moving far beyond typical corporate adoption.
I mean, Tencent is literally drawing crowds of retired engineers and librarians in Shenzhen to massive public installation events. They are teaching average citizens how to deploy these autonomous agents. The Shenzhen district government is drafting formal policy support to accelerate the rollout.
It's a national movement.
OpenClaw went from a technical niche on GitHub to a geopolitical strategic priority in a matter of weeks.
It's a brilliant, aggressive maneuver by China. By democratizing the agent framework at the absolute grassroots level, putting it in the hands of millions of citizens and small developers, they're accelerating localized innovation at an unprecedented pace.
Because everyone is building on it.
Exactly. They are building an entire ecosystem of thousands of specialized, localized models rather than relying on one monolithic corporate model. And Nvidia, looking at this explosion, is terrified of losing control of the developer ecosystem.
Which explains Nvidia's next move. They are reportedly building NemoClaw, their own open-source Western answer to OpenClaw. They are wrapping their Nemotron models into personal assistants that can code, browse, and execute tasks. And they're giving free early access to enterprise giants like Google, Adobe, Salesforce, Cisco, and CrowdStrike.
Let's look at the underlying motivation there. Think of OpenClaw like the Android operating system of the AI age.
Okay.
If China's Little Lobster framework becomes the default operating system for global AI agents, the West loses the entire software layer. Nvidia's open source strategy is a pure defensive moat.
How does it defend them?
By optimizing highly capable open models specifically for their proprietary CUDA software stack and their specific GPUs, they are making it economically irrational for developers to port their work over to rival hardware.
And the rival hardware is advancing. We have reports this week that China's DeepSeek is successfully training their frontier models on Huawei chips, completely bypassing the Western hardware ecosystem and the export bans.
This is the core of the geopolitical tension. The battleground of the 21st century has fundamentally moved from physical trade routes and tariffs to model weights, open source frameworks, and compute clusters.
And that tension is spilling over into U.S. domestic policy in a massive, highly contentious way. We are watching a major legal battle develop that will define the relationship between the tech sector and the defense establishment. Anthropic is officially suing the Trump administration because the Pentagon has blacklisted them, designating the AI startup as a supply chain risk.
This is a major flashpoint.
Now, it is critical that we look at this purely objectively, stating the facts from the source material without endorsing other viewpoint, because the implications are profound for you, our listeners, who need to understand the regulatory landscape.
Absolutely. The facts of the case are strictly these. The Pentagon applied the formal supply chain risk label to Anthropic. This is a severe, restrictive designation that is historically reserved for foreign adversaries or compromised vendors.
Right.
The Pentagon's stated position is that Anthropic's technology and practices represent a direct threat to U.S. national security. As a direct result of this designation, defense vendors and contractors are legally forced to certify that they do not use Anthropic's models in any capacity.
That's a huge financial hit.
It is. Anthropic claims in their lawsuit that this mandate is already causing lucrative federal contracts to be canceled and is putting hundreds of millions of dollars in private enterprise deals in doubt. Anthropic's legal filing characterizes the government's actions as unprecedented and unlawful.
Right. And Anthropic's stated position, their argument for why the Pentagon applied this designation, is rooted in their corporate policies.
Yeah.
Anthropic claims they explicitly refuse to allow the Department of Defense to use their technology for the mass surveillance of American citizens or for the operation of autonomously firing weapons.
So they drew an ethical line.
Yes. Anthropic's lawsuit argues that the blacklist is direct retaliation for their ethical stance on how AI should be deployed. And this legal standoff has triggered a massive, unified industry response.
Which is rare in this competitive space.
Extremely rare. Over 30 prominent engineers and researchers from rival companies, specifically OpenAI and Google DeepMind, have filed a formal court statement backing Anthropic's lawsuit. Even Jeff Dean, the highly respected chief scientist at Google DeepMind, signed the brief.
Wow. What are they arguing?
These industry leaders are arguing that the Pentagon's designation was arbitrary, that it will cast a chilling effect over open deliberation regarding AI risks, and that it ultimately damages the scientific competitiveness of the United States.
It's a profound legal standoff. It really highlights the immense friction of integrating frontier technology into national security apparatuses. But to truly understand the global context of this compute war, we have to look at how different regulatory environments are being weaponized globally. While the U.S. is mired in domestic legal battles over software supply chains, China has just approved the first ever commercial brain implant.
Let's transition to that because the contrast in speed is remarkable. A Chinese company called Narayen Medical Technology has developed a coin-sized wireless device that sits on the surface of the brain. It decodes electrical signals from neurons and allows patients with spinal cord injuries to physically control computer cursors.
And this isn't just a clinical trial.
No, it is fully approved for commercial use. Meanwhile, in the U.S., companies like Neuralink, Synchron, and Paradromics are still navigating the lengthy clinical trial process.
It is what we can call the era of the sovereign BCI, sovereign brain-computer interfaces. China's strategic leap in fast-tracking the commercialization of BCIs illustrates how regulatory environments are becoming actual weapons of statecraft.
How does that play out long-term?
By approving commercial use now, they begin gathering real-world, high-fidelity human telemetry data years before Western companies. In the AI economy, the state that regulates fastest without fundamentally breaking the technology captures the ultimate data moat.
Because they have the real-world feedback loops.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And biology is the final data moat.
It's an incredible race. And while all this compute is battling in the cloud and interfacing with our biology, the physical world is experiencing its own revolution. Let's talk about the robotics flip.
The physical manifestation of AI.
The battle of spiralized atoms versus general-purpose humanoids. Uber founder Travis Kalanick has resurfaced, and he has launched a highly ambitious new robotics startup called Atoms. He has absorbed his ghost kitchen company, Cloud Kitchens, and is in the final stages of acquiring an autonomous industrial vehicle startup called Pronto.
He's making moves.
Kalanick says his specific goal is to build wheelbase for robots. He is strictly focused on specialized, aggressive industrial rollouts for food delivery, mining operations, and transport logistics.
Very targeted.
Very. He secured major backing from Uber and intends to roll out self-driving tech faster and more aggressively than Waymo. But his most interesting quote was his explicit rejection of the humanoid form. He stated definitively that he is not building humanoids.
Kalanick is taking a deeply pragmatic, purely industrial approach. He's looking at the physical constraints of the real world and asking, how do we engineer the most efficient machine for this specific isolated environment?
Right.
If your goal is to move tons of dirt in an open pit mine, a bipedal humanoid is an absurd, inefficient form factor. You want a low center of gravity, multi-wheeled, ruggedized machine. You adapt the machine to the specific physical task. It is a strategy of specialized vertical integration.
Right. But then you look across the Pacific and you have Xiaomi and Tesla going the exact opposite direction. Xiaomi just tested 2 bipedal humanoid robots on the active assembly line at their Beijing electric vehicle factory.
Side by side with humans.
Yeah. And these weren't just walking around a controlled lab. They completed 90.2% of their assigned mechanical work over a grueling 3-hour trial. These 2-legged robots were dynamically applying lug nuts to vehicle chassis with a cycle time of 76 seconds.
76 seconds.
Lu Weibing, the president of Xiaomi, stated that 76 seconds is fast enough to actually keep up with a real, human-paced factory assembly line.
It is a remarkable technical achievement. And, we should add context here. A UK-based robotics firm called Humanoid ran a very similar pilot in February. They also achieved an over 90% success rate on complex physical tasks, but their robotic torsos were fixed to a stable base.
Which is much easier.
Way easier. They were not attempting to stand and balance on 2 legs while applying torque to a lug nut.
Exactly. The balance problem is massive. Beijing literally just held a humanoid robot half-marathon to test bipedal locomotion over long distances.
That's insane.
Meanwhile, Elon Musk says Tesla's mega AI chip fab project, which is specifically designed to power the compute for their Optimus humanoids, is going to launch in 7 days.
That capital is just pouring in.
We also had some fascinating culture and hardware notes filtering through this week that intersect with this physical reality. Apple launched the MacBook Neo, explicitly marketing it as their most repairable laptop ever, signaling a shift away from disposable hardware toward longevity.
Interesting shift.
Steven Spielberg was speaking at SXSW, confirming his deep belief that aliens exist, but fiercely denying that he uses any generative AI in his filmmaking process.
The artists are drawing lines.
And ByteDance had to suspend the launch of their highly anticipated video generation model over massive unresolved copyright disputes regarding their training data. But coming back to the fundamental robotics debate, I have to push back on the humanoid approach.
Okay, let's hear it.
Kalanick wants to build a wheelbase, a specialized, highly efficient machine perfectly adapted to a task. Xiaomi is putting a 2-legged robot on an assembly line to tighten lug nuts. Doesn't Kalanick's approach make infinitely more sense from a pure engineering standpoint?
In the short term, yes.
Right. Why are we pouring billions into making robots look exactly like us, complete with the terrifying balance issues of a half-marathon runner, when a specialized stable arm on a fixed track can clearly do the job faster and cheaper?
If you analyze the problem purely from the perspective of short-term industrial efficiency and capital return, Kalanick is absolutely right. A specialized robotic arm mounted on a fixed, stable track will tighten a lug nut faster, with higher precision and with significantly less energy consumption than a bipedal robot that has to constantly dedicate massive compute cycles just to calculate its own equilibrium.
Exactly. So why build the humanoid?
Because you are missing the larger architectural goal. You have to connect the humanoid form factor back to what we discussed earlier regarding Yann LeCun, AMI Labs, and world models.
The push to understand and navigate generalized physical reality.
Precisely. The humanoids being developed by Xiaomi and Tesla are not just highly expensive factory workers. They are mobile, physical, data-gathering vessels. Look at the built environment of our planet.
Okay.
Our factories, our hospitals, our homes, our cities, they were all explicitly designed for the human form factor. The specific height of a stair, the shape of a door handle, the clearance of a kitchen counter, the spacing between machines on an assembly line.
So the robots need to fit into our world.
If you want to train an artificial intelligence model to seamlessly understand, navigate, and manipulate the entirety of the human world, you need a physical agent that experiences that world exactly as a human does.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Navigating a dynamic factory floor on 2 legs, dealing with balance, spatial awareness, human coworkers, and unexpected physical obstacles feeds incredibly rich, high-fidelity telemetry back into the central intelligence network.
So the initial inefficiency of walking on two legs is just the cost of admission to gather the data.
Exactly. The humanoid form factor is a long-term data play designed to achieve generalized physical intelligence. Kalanick is playing a localized game for short-term industrial dominance in specific, controlled verticals like mining and logistics.
But Musk and Xiaomi are playing a generalized game.
They want to build a robotic workforce that can be dropped into any pre-existing human environment on Earth and function immediately, without requiring the company to retrofit the building with tracks and specific wheelbases.
That is a profound strategic distinction. It is the difference between building a machine to execute a single job perfectly and building a machine to learn how to do literally any job a human can do.
And that physical learning compounds exponentially. Once the central foundational model figures out how to dynamically walk up a flight of stairs in a Beijing factory, every single other humanoid connected to that model instantly knows how to walk upstairs in a hospital in London, or a retail store in New York, or a private home.
It's a shared brain.
The friction and the capital expense of the bipedal form is simply the price you pay to unlock the entire human-designed infrastructure of the planet.
It really is a great capital migration. We have covered a staggering journey today, tracking the literal restructuring of the global economy.
We covered a lot of ground.
We started by watching big tech deliberately trade its human middle class to fund $600 billion data centers.
Yeah.
We analyzed the raw ambition of Musk trying to emulate entire corporate structures with Macrohard, balanced against the brittle reality of failing coding divisions and delayed models.
And the regulatory arbitrage.
Right, we unpacked how Microsoft is bypassing high-paya to build the ultimate consumer health moat. We navigated a geopolitical Cold War fought not with missiles, but with open-source Lobsters, transformer MABA architectures, and sovereign brain implants. And we ended on the factory floor, watching two-legged machines tighten lug nuts, not just to build cars, but to gather the physical data required to understand our reality.
The undeniable through line connecting all of these signals is the pursuit of autonomy. Whether it is a software agent autonomously managing your calendar and declining meetings, a sovereign intelligence model optimizing national security frameworks, or a humanoid physically building an electric car, the capital is flowing relentlessly towards systems that operate without the friction of human intervention.
The trough of deployment is going to be rough, though.
The transition will be chaotic. It will be fraught with profound legal and societal perils, as we saw in North Dakota, but the trajectory is set.
Which brings us right back to where we started. We are tearing down the skyscraper to build the launch pad. So here's something to mull over on your own as you process all of this. If artificial intelligence can now successfully emulate the complex functions of an entire company through concepts like Macrohard, if it can manage our communications autonomously, and if it can physically build the products on the assembly line, what is the actual definition of a human entrepreneur in the year 2030?
It's a daunting question.
Will you be managing a team of human employees, or will your job simply be to curate, prompt, and monitor a portfolio of fully autonomous AI corporations?
It is the ultimate question for the next decade of capital allocation and human endeavor. Thank you for diving into the depths with us today.
Stay intensely curious. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
That concludes our weekly rundown. The signal for this week is infrastructure sovereignty. Whether it's $26 billion for open models or $600 billion for data centers, the winners of 2026 are those who own the metal. This episode was made possible by JamgaMind. Until next week, keep unraveling the future.
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads. We build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.